So today's webinar again is what school counselors need to know about the LCAP. So let's give you a quick description. In this workshop, participants will learn about the essential elements of the Local Control and Accountability Plan, the LCAP. Targeted discussions will focus on goals, metrics, and actions, and how local educational agencies can include social and emotional learning and student well-being to their comprehensive plan. Participants will learn how to engage in the development and implementation of the LCAP, recognizing that school counselors, yes, school counselors, all of you, are essential stakeholders in the LCAP process. So I'm super excited to have Dr. Deborah Hernandez here today. She has been in education for 25 years and has served as a teacher, assistant principal, director of educational services, and is currently the director of continuous improvement on the LCAP at the San Diego County Office of Education. She feels that through intentional planning and data analysis, the LCAP is an opportunity for local educational agencies to operationalize equity, especially for English learners, students from low-income families, students in foster care, and other marginalized students, such as African American and Native American students. Welcome, welcome, Dr. Hernandez. We're so glad that you're here to help educate us on this important document that school counselors need to have a role on, and I'm going to pass it on to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Tanya. It's a pleasure to be here. When I hear all that good stuff, I'm like, wow, that sounds like a great person. Who is that? Oh, it's me. So thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. And I'm going to, let me see, get here. I want to just to share that today is going to feel like a boot camp. And if any of you go out to do exercise boot camps, or if you have someone in the military, it is going to be fast and furious. But I want to arm you with all the information you need so that you can go back and you can talk about the LCAP with conviction and know how you can be a part of that process. As you know, our team is amazing, and they're going to be monitoring the chat box for questions throughout the session. I always like to start off with some self-care and some self-reflection to see how we're feeling, knowing that spring is almost in the air. On a scale of sheep, how are you feeling today? Please put your number in the chat box. And then Zarette, maybe perhaps you can tell us some of those numbers that we're seeing.
So as they're coming in, we begin with a 1. We're moving into a 4, gradually into 6 5s. We have a 9, 7 5 3, and a couple 6s there.
All right. No 2s. I haven't seen a 2. I think that was Moises, your son. He sounded like he was a 2.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you for that. I wanted to start off with a little levity. The conversation today will be a little more deep, but thank you for that. It's one of my favorite things to do. Before we start off, I just want to talk a little bit about what I'm hoping you'll walk away with. We're hoping that you will have a basic understanding of the Local Control and Accountability Plan. From this point on, I'll probably call it the LCAP, all right? So that's the Local Control and Accountability Plan. I'm hoping that you'll walk away with an understanding about the California state priorities and how you fit into those priorities as a counselor, and then know how you can support stakeholders in the process of not only the development, but the implementation of the plan also. So we're going to go through our conversation today in this order. We're going to start big picture. We're going to start with the local control funding formula. I know many of you may be new to your position and maybe new to the educational realm in terms of thinking about when was LCF and when did the funding sources change, and also we're going to take some time to build our context around that. Then we're also going to look at the California Department of Education LCFF priorities, and you'll notice there below that nice beautiful green color, we're going to spend and pause a little bit of time on priorities 5 and 6. I believe that's where your work lives. I know that your work is all around all the priorities, but 5 and 6 especially. I want you to have a good understanding what those priorities are. Then where the arrow is, that we're going to talk about LCAP. That's where it gets a little technical. We're going to talk about the different pieces of the LCAP so that when you're ready to look at the LCAP for your district or districts that you're working with, you will be able to go in and find that LCAP and have a better understanding what you'll be looking for. Then finally, we'll look about the increase or improve services and really the spirit and the essence of the LCAP and how it is truly an opportunity for our LEAs to operationalize equity. So let's start at the top. So looking at the local control funding formula, you may or may not know that it was passed back in 2013. So we've had it for some time. The law changed on how funding was going to be given to districts within the state of California. And the great news was for schools that had high percentages of English learners, low income, and foster youth students, they would receive more money than others. In addition, it provided flexibility for districts to decide how they're going to allocate their funds and how they're going to work with the community, stakeholders, and parents to be a part of that process. So it was really a step and an innovative step in that direction to provide local control as well as extra funding to school districts and schools that had high percentages of those students. Kind of looks like this. And so there's a base grant and it's based on grade level spans. But when you have additional students in low income, English learner, and foster youth, you receive extra funding. So that means that these schools really do make out with more money in order to support those students. On the other end, if you are a district with a low percentage of low income English learner and foster youth, you receive less money. So that was the balancing act, right? To make sure that schools that needed the extra funding would get it. There is something that goes along with that though. When you receive that money, you must create a plan on how you're going to spend that money, and hence the LCAP. So the LCFF priorities work from a global level. When we're going to talk a little bit about the California Department of Education LCFF priorities and whole child map. I like to ground ourselves into that prior to having our conversation about the LCAP. In addition, MTSS, many of you are part of this work with this essential work with MTSS. We have the understanding and belief and the assumption that these two go hand in hand, right? And then you'll see that bottom picture there is really a way to organize the priorities and the work that we do. So let's start with the whole child resource map. This is something that's been around for a while on the California Department of Education website. And as you notice, right dab in the middle is that cradle to career and that student-centered view. There's priorities, as you see, that come out in the rays, and there's different colors. So the light blue color you see, those are conditions of learning. That includes basic services such as having instructional materials, making sure that you have facilities that are up to par, in addition to making sure that you have credentialed teachers. State standards, you're looking at student outcomes for state standards. Course access, do all students, especially English learners, have course access to all the courses needed so they will be prepared for college or career? And then there's two other blue areas, the expelled youth and foster youth, that are essential for our County Office of Education schools. I'm going to go down to the green area. That's where we live, I believe, as counselors, in looking at the school climate, as well as student engagement, as well as parent involvement. And then the student outcomes, of course, are the outcomes on academic measures, as well as student achievement. This is really the grounding force for thinking in terms of the LCAP. And like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we see these working hand in hand with MTSS, with all, some, and few students. When we present our workshops for our county, all of our districts, as well as charter schools, we use this framing that they go hand in hand. They're not separate. We want to see them working together in tandem. When you organize all of the priorities, the California state priorities, they come into these buckets, I guess you can call them, the conditions of learning, engagement, and student outcomes. We are going to spend time in that green area, the engagement piece. I chose to talk about two essential areas, the student engagement and school climate. Even though I know that all of you touch all of these areas, all of you are essential when it comes to supporting academic outcome and achievement for your students, as well as working with parents. But I chose to talk about two very essential elements, the student engagement and the school climate area. So I wanted to pause there and see, like I said, it's kind of like a boot camp. I'm going quickly, but I wanted to provide you just an opportunity to see what speaks to you so far. Is this something new that you're looking at? Is this something that really aligns to what you're thinking? Please just provide something in the chat box and Zarek can share out what we're seeing.
Just a friendly reminder to please click panelists and attendees. Here we go. Aligns with my thinking.
Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, I appreciate that. And knowing that we have essential work that we're doing in all areas, but the two that really speak to us are those.
We also have soaking it all in. It's new and a lot. It's new to me. Interested to learn more about the alignment between LCFF priorities and MTSS.
Excellent.
It's aligning with the data.
Absolutely. And we're looking at the data collection can be used through the lens of all, some, and few, correct? And that also aligns with the support for your supplemental and concentration grant funds. Thank you for that. So just as a reminder and just a review, that these are the priorities that, that we looked at on that whole child map, just in a list format. In addition, these are required metrics that must be shared within the LCAP plan itself. So not only are they a priority for the state of California, that alignment pieces that must be also placed into your LCAP. And we are starting our reviews now. We offer an initial draft review for our districts, and we're starting those review now. And we look for every single one and making sure that they are found within the LCAP. Like I said, today we are going to target on priority 5, which is pupil engagement, and priority 6, which is school climate. So priority 5, if we just look at that for a second, that is the priority that addresses school attendance, chronic absenteeism, middle and high school dropout, and graduation rates. So I'm sure a lot of those terms are what you work with on a daily basis. Also talks about in terms of improving access for our students, especially our high needs students, for supports, including our students with disabilities and students in poverty, English learners, and foster youth. So that mental health piece, as you know, I'm sure you're aware of, in the learning continuity plan was the first time that the mental health prompt was there for our districts to respond to. What we're seeing is the majority of the LCAPs that we are reading right now has pulled that through to their LCAP, even though there's not a prompt around that specifically. So we're really excited about that. And we feel that that's where you come in as counselors. That's the work that you are doing. And so that would be what we would want to see within the LCAP itself. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about model practices. What could this look like within LEA? And those model practices have been shared through the California Department of Education. So this priority itself looks from preschool to 12th grade, and it is on the premise that a positive self-identity in relation to school is essential, not only through the curriculum and supportive relationships, but also knowing that there are some barriers within attendance, including mental health, nutrition, and transportational needs for our students, especially our unduplicated pupils. Those are English learners, foster youth, and low income. So that is an essential component. In addition, knowing that all student groups, including our disadvantaged groups and students with disabilities, they benefit from improved access to mental health and other support services. So within your job, you're working within the mental health field, working out with that, and also student supports that we know that this is especially helpful for our high needs students. Also that we heard this from someone in the chat box, that data-driven strategies, that you are looking carefully at who is being absent and how to support those. And you have built those relationships very carefully and intentionally, that increases attendance as well as attendance rates. When we talk about model practices for priority 5, there's a lot that can happen within this area. A couple I've outlined here. One is implementing a plan to address student engagement. Many times we have plans for academic outcomes. We have assessment plans, but having a specific plan to address student engagement is definitely a promising and model practice. In addition, trying to seek and understand the needs of all students. That can include professional learning for staff about specific student needs. What could specific needs be for this student group and how to support them. Supporting families through positive learning environments, making sure that as they come onto a school site, they feel welcome and the support is there for them. They have that key adult that's caring for them. Many times as our counselor, they seek the counselors out because they feel comfortable, they feel respected, and they feel like their voice is being heard. And then social emotional learning is something that is newer, within the past 5 years that we're seeing, and especially this past year. This is including this most social and emotional learning that we're seeing across the county and across the state. And it's really reflecting that critical positive relationship role and the connections that students can have that's going to increase attendance, increase graduation rates, and increase students being on campus. So those are model practices, and I'm sure you see a lot of your work within Priority 5. I'd like to jump over to Priority 6. This is school climate. Now, Priority 6 addresses areas such as suspension, expulsion, and a sense of safety and school connectedness. They sound pretty close together, 5 and 6, but 6 is really that the positive discipline practices that are happening within the school site, PBIS, things like that we see happening within all levels of education. Also, there's a commitment to the cognitive, social, emotional, and physical needs of each and every student, knowing that students are unique with their specific needs. And then model practices we'll touch upon as well, really looking at promoting engagement, sense of safety, and adopting those positive disciplinary measures. So the school climate, the Priority 6, really looks at about the suspension rates, expulsion rates, and how to receive information from our stakeholders through perhaps surveys, having focus groups, having conversations with students themselves, having student panels. All of that will give us information about how students feel about and families feel about the school climate. Schools that successfully sustain a positive climate are committed to meeting not only the academic needs, but the cognitive, social, and emotional needs of each student so that they feel included and they feel respected and they have positive relationships, not only with students, but with staff members and families within the community. It's the implementation of positive disciplinary measures such as restorative practices, PBIS, restorative circles, really is the basis for building those positive relationships. Knowing that having good relationships includes having a sense of security and safety and being connected amongst the school community, not only how student to students are connecting, but how are students connecting to staff, how staff connecting to parents. It's really part of the whole picture in the community. We know that when rules and expectations are clearly communicated and that suspensions and expulsions are reserved only for the absolute necessary offenses, that students may feel more supportive and feel like they have what they need to thrive within the system itself. In terms of talking about model practices, this is where you probably hear like the California Healthy Kids Survey, school climate improvement, having a plan for that piece of it, conducting local climate surveys. That California Healthy Kids surveys every 2 years, I believe. So what are you doing in the interim? How are you collecting data to support students and families and community well-being? Building the capacity of staff support and wellness as well, making sure that you provide that engagement, for students as well as sense of safety and wellness within the system, having the beautiful, engaging physical environment. So when a parent and student walking into the office, it's a pleasant experience. When they come to the counselor's office, it's a positive experience. When, what have you, making sure that that supportive experience is there for the family. And then also, of course, adopting and having very high expectations in terms of positive disciplinary measures. So those are the two areas that I see counselors fitting into. And so I want to pause right there again for a chat box response to see what spoke to you in terms of priorities 5 and 6. And you're welcome to place that into the chat box.
So we're starting with many different factors to work on, only using suspensions for really bad circumstances, positive disciplinary measures originating from a prioritizing positive relationship and connections. The info being shared reminds me of the webinar I held the other day, how the counselors keep data. There's a lot of connection here.
Absolutely. Yes, I see that as well. That data piece is not only for academic outcomes, right? So having that data and thinking of measures and metrics that's going to tell you how you're doing in certain factors, right? So sometimes it's hard to, when you're thinking in terms of academic outcomes, you can have a number, but when you have qualitative, like building a strong relationship with the student and families, how could you measure that? So that's a great way to look at that as well. And so I'm hoping that by reviewing priority 5 and 6, there's ideas on how you fit into the LCAP, your everyday job, the work that you are doing fits directly into the LCAP, right? And so I'm hoping that those two areas will definitely provide you with guidance on what to look for within the LCAP as well. So now we're going to jump into the LCAP. And so I went quickly through the other pieces because this is the part that I want you to come away with some knowledge so that you will be able to advocate for counselor support within LCAP, advocate for student supports in priorities 5 and 6, as well as other priorities, and be able to have a conversation about the LCAP. So the first area we're going to talk about is the LCAP in essence and in spirit is to operationalize equity. It is a commitment from an LEA to the community on how they're going to support their students that are underachieving. You know, most specifically, they have to share English learner, foster youth, and low income. It is a way for them for LEAs and charter schools to build continuity and alignment across their system. And then I'm going to share a little bit about the cycle, which we call the seasons of the LCAP. So you'll know kind of where we're at right now. And then I'm going to give you a preview of where we're going when we start the new school year. So before we do that, we're going to launch a poll. It's an anonymous poll. And the first question is, how would you rate your knowledge about the LCAP? Very knowledgeable, knowledgeable, somewhat knowledgeable, not knowledgeable, and what's the LCAP? And then the second question is, have you provided input for the 21-22 LCAP? So it's coming to you now. Please go ahead and take a second and vote or share your information. I'm noticing on the bottom, Tanya, it says host and panelists can't vote.
Can you see it?
I can see it. Let me see, but I can't tap on anything.
Looks like the attendees are able to vote.
Okay, perfect. Oh, panelists can't. Okay, got it. Okay.
Dr. Deborah, we do have a question. Will results be affected if I vote again?
No,
I
it's okay.
completed the survey at the beginning.
Oh, no problem. Go ahead. If you've already completed it, there's no need to do it again. I don't believe so, unless it cleared. Go ahead and do it again. It's not going to hurt the outcome.
Thank you, Dr. Deborah.
Sorry about that. I don't know how I launched it at the beginning.
It just popped out. Are you seeing results on your side?
Yes. Can you not see them?
I can't see them on mine, but that's okay.
Okay. So we can share that. How would you rate your knowledge about the LCAP? We have majority somewhat knowledgeable. We have 2 that have knowledgeable and then 2 not knowledgeable. So right in the middle is where we're seeing that. And then have you provided input for the 2021-22 LCAP? And we have 9 who have said yes and 12 who had said no.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that information. So what I'd like to do then, based on that information, is just take some time to go over the specific elements. Perfect, I see it here now. And the specific elements of the LCAP, so it will give you some insight on what to look for. Just right off the bat, the LCAP, we are starting a brand new 3-year cycle with a brand new template. So if you've been involved in LCAP development in the past, Last year, we did not complete the LCAP, as you recall, but the year before that, we were ending a 3-year cycle with a different template. So the template looks different. It's more efficient, in my opinion. The information is easier for stakeholders as well. And again, it provides an opportunity to share how you're going to address specific groups. And most specifically, those 3 that we outlined: English learners, low income, and foster youth. And as a county, we recommend any high needs students, such as African American, Native American, and any student that needs the extra support, students with disabilities, should also be outlined within your plan.
Dr. Deborah,
Yes.
we do have a question. What happens when goals are not met?
Great, thank you for that question. So each year, the LEA has to provide an annual update. So they provide an annual update on the actions and goals they created. And then they have to publicly share that information back out to their community. And so each year, after the goals are set in actions, they come back and they provide an update. This year, as you see on the screen, the annual update includes 2 different components. So the first element within the packet of information is the budget overview for parents, and that's the funding piece that goes along with the LCAP. Then the annual update has 2 sections this year, one from the 2019-20 LCAP, and the second from the learning continuity plan that districts had to complete by September 30th. So each year they have to provide an update, and that is provided back to the community. Then the third section within the LCAP is what we call the template narrative, and that is the areas where they fill out the goals, metrics, and actions, as well as how stakeholders were involved with the LCAP. And then finally, the last section, which is brand new, was not there before, is expenditure tables. So as districts are filling out the information, they're also filling out expenditure tables. So it's very clear and succinct for stakeholders, including yourself, to see how money is being spent. You don't have to go through the whole LCAP. You can look at the expenditure tables to see how money is being spent and if it's targeted to those unduplicated pupils. This is what our timeline looks right now. Right now, our districts are completing their initial draft writing. They should be, many could have already had their first hearing. You must have a public hearing at a local governing board meeting. And that is an opportunity for public and boards to provide feedback before you present the final draft. The final draft must be done by July 1st. And then once that's done, then if you are a district, within 5 days, you share it back to the County Office of Education. And then we keep a hold of it and we do the formal approval review. If you're working with charter schools do not have that 5-day window. They must have it all completed by July 1st. Once it's submission for the adoption, and then once that's completed, we go through our formal review, and our formal review happens from about July 5th, when we come back from the 4th of July holiday, all the way up to about August 13th or so. And then we have that window to share any questions we may have, clarifications. We provide guidance from that point on. And then by October 8th, we must have a formal approval letter sent to the superintendent. Once that's done, then they must post all of their LCAPs onto the website, and we must post them as well as on our website. And I'll share with you that link in just a little bit on where you can find LCAPs from the 2019-20 school year. I'm talking about continuity and alignment. Within that main body, the narrative part of the LCAP, are 3 essential areas, especially when we're looking in terms of how to support our students. One is they are specifically identifying a goal. They must share a specific goal on what they're going to do to support students that must align with the metrics or the measurements that they are stating that they're going to use to measure their progress. Now, those are those 8 priority areas. That's the metrics they must use, plus they may use above and beyond those as well. Then finally, they create the actions, and those actions must fit in with the metrics and goals, and they must be actionable. And what we're recommending is that if you are creating actions, you use a formula that I'll share in just a second again, as who is going to do what, for whom, and to what end. When these are in alignment, we feel that you are able to operationalize equity and you have those improved outcomes for English learners, low income and foster youth, as well as high need students. So if we just take a second to look at the types of goals, there are basically 3 types of goals that an LEA could use. There's different types. It could be a combination. There's nothing in statute that says they must use a specific goal. What we're seeing right now through our initial draft reviews is the majority, I think only one district had a maintenance of progress goal, but everybody is using broad goals. Broad goal is less concentrated in scope. It's an overall goal for all students, like increase academic outcomes for all students. A focus goal, on the other hand, is very succinct. It is time bound. There may be percentages and specific students that are called out. And then a maintenance of progress goal could be like, we're doing really well in academic outcomes. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing, and we're going to just progress monitor along the way, but we're going to continue that goal because we're doing, and it's going to be a maintenance of that goal because we're doing relatively well. Here's an example of what the comparison could be. A broad goal could be like all students will demonstrate growth towards meeting and exceeding English language arts and English language proficiency. That's a very broad goal for everybody. In comparison, a focus goal would be very specific, like decrease the number of students and staff identified as being targeted tier 2 and intensive tier 3 social, emotional, and mental health supported by 15%. By May 2022 as measured the wellness check survey data. So as you can see that focus goal will be more living within what we were talking about for priorities 5 and 6, that social and emotional goal, that the way to support those students there. So those are kind of 2 different takes on a type of goal. The third kind, like I said, is that maintenance of progress. And this is described on just continuing to work towards keeping those high levels of elevated priority or goals that's going on. All right, so we've been talking for a while. I believe self-care is essential. We're gonna give you about 20 seconds. Please look away from your screen, do a big stretch, and then we'll come back in about 20 seconds or so. Try to look 20 feet away, that'll be helpful. Great, we'll come back in about 5 seconds. Thank you. That always feels good. So for some reason, I always feel great. So we've talked about the types of goals. I wanted to take some time to talk about measuring and reporting results. And again, the required metrics are here. We must have a measurement for each one of these. And each one may have a couple, like for instance, basic services has 3 embedded. The instructional materials, the facilities, as well as credentialed teachers. So we look for each one of those metrics within the LCAP. The actions themselves, that's what I shared just a second ago. We really like our districts and LEAs to think about theory of action, right? So not just the term action, but what are they going to do with the action? So the theory is like, if we do this or we change something, it's going to cause this positive change, either in an increase of student outcome, such as for academics, or a decrease in chronic absenteeism or suspension rate, right? So if we do this one thing, it's going to happen. And it's going to lead to a higher level of outcome for the students, or it's going to actually assist us in creating our goals, right? And meeting our goals. We are sharing this formula for anyone creating their goal: who does what, for whom, to what end. If they create that within their actions, then we feel that's very comprehensive and clear for the reader to know what's happening. So in terms of alignment, I have an example, and I'm not going to go through every piece of it, but I wanted to provide it for you so that you can go back and have a look at it if you have any questions about how everything works together. Alrighty, and I recognize that the example that I'm sharing with you is more towards a middle high school, and it's more on academic outcomes. All right, but I just wanted to show you one in its totality. So here you see the goal and the description. And so when you look through the LCAP, once there's a draft available for you, you can expect to see the goal and description. And then right underneath it, you'll see the explanation of why they did develop the goal. Now, part of the instructions and part of our recommendations is to really take a two-pronged approach. Number one is to think about what kind of state and local data did you use to support you in creating this goal. In every school site there and district, there are multiple priorities and there's multiple initiatives happening. So why did you select this one? We really want to hear that come through the explanation. And then the second part of it is, what kind of feedback did you receive from your stakeholders, right? So is it through survey data, student panels? Could it be a survey that parents received, a staff, meeting? What could it be that helped them with this piece? So we're really looking for a two-pronged approach with a response within the explanation. This could be overwhelming. I'm not going to go through all of it, but this is just an example of how the metrics piece works, right? So I'll just bring your attention to the bottom row, and that's the course aspects, course grades, which you may be involved with, reviewing, auditing, supporting students with that. It could be a metric such as a point in time course grades. When I say point in time, it could be like at the end of April, like April 30th or the end of May. It could be just a point in time that you're going to use each year. And you may look at not only the aggregate level, like for all students, but you're also going to disaggregate the data for your English learner students, because you know that there's a disparity in outcomes there. And so that could be your baseline. And then you have to project what you like it to look like in 3 years. So disaggregated data outcomes based on the groups that you are watching very closely, right? So you want English learners to have this desired outcome, which is higher than the aggregate level perhaps. But we really encourage our districts, and as you read through the LCAPs, we encourage you to look for what's the baseline data and what's the desired outcomes in 3 years, right? What does that look like? The reason the 3 columns in the center are not done yet, you'll notice when you see a draft or you see the LCAP, is that those outcomes will be shared after the year has passed. So next year, they're going to provide an update for year 1. Then they're going to provide an update for year 2 and then year 3. Here's the actions, and there's a couple of things I wanted to point out to you when you have a peek at an LCAP. Number 1 is that this table automatically links into a data table. And so anything that is marked as contributing on actions is going to go into a separate table, which is really helpful. So the first column, you'll see the action number, a short title, because that title is going to go into the spreadsheet table. The description there is in the center, and this is the type of description that we're talking about when we talk about who does what for whom to what end. So the first example is the targeted ELA support, 5 additional instructional support staff. That's the who. What are they going to do? They're going to provide targeted support for identified students, specifically focusing on English learners to improve outcomes. Provide ongoing progress monitoring will be conducted both quarterly by iReady as well as ELA assessments. So you see it's pretty clear by reading the description who's going to do the work and who it's targeting. That's most important, especially for transparency purposes. Then the funds, and then that last column, a term that might be new to you is contributing. So contributing, if you have a yes for contributing, that means that you are targeting those focused funds for your English learners, your foster youth and low-income students. So you're really targeting that support. And so that contributing piece is not only a way that you're sharing how you're going to operationalize equity, but it's also a mandate. And in statute, you must use the amount of funds that's provided to you for supplemental concentration grant funds. Alrighty, so the seasons of the LCAP, this is just really thinking in terms like, where are we at right now? So right now we are ending spring. I recognize we're getting close to summer, but right now it's really districts that you're working with, they are feverishly completing their first draft, and I mean feverishly. And they're waiting mostly for the financial pieces to fill in from the May revise, which is usually around May 15th. So they may not have that information yet, or they may have it, but they are feverishly in the writing piece of it. They should be sharing with parent advisory committees. They should have an LCAP committee, school site council, English language advisory committees. They should be sharing and getting feedback from them. And they want to make sure that before the draft goes to board for adoption, that those very important stakeholders have an opportunity to share. And then they are still, of course, doing revisions along the way. In summertime, you know, we never stop in education, but in summertime is a great opportunity to see, like, number one, you know, for you to keep your ear to the ground. Was it adopted, right? Did they meet the deadline, which all our school districts do meet the deadline? Review and celebrate the successes, draft a timeline for engagement as we move forward. Also, does it provide a plan for all students to succeed? And for counselors specifically, where do you see yourself within the language of the LCAP? How can you support the work that's happening within the LCAP, especially in priorities 5 and 6, right? That's where you live. So do you see your work within the LCAP? In fall, when we start moving forward again, where is it posted? You know, it has to be posted online. There should be a copy in the office for people to have access to. Who's responsible for the process? Who's on the LCAP committee? Who's going to keep, moving that work forward? When are the meetings going to happen? A great way for you to become involved is to find out from the district, what kind of, how can you support the plan, number one, and then when the meetings will be, so that you could be at those meetings to make sure that you are sharing information that you're hearing and the data you're collecting from students and families. And also looking at ongoing meetings. There should be ongoing meetings throughout the year to see how are you working towards those goals, and if it's in how parents and families can be involved in that process. Then that takes us back to winter time, which is right about December, January. That's when most districts start revving up for creating their new LCAP, right? So they're going to have to get the new LCAP up and going. So that usually happens right about January after winter break. So the reason I share this with you is just so you can see kind of the cycle of what LCAP, the seasons, we call the seasons, but the cycle that happens. So I'm just about done here. I just wanted to share two more important areas. One is increase and improve services, and the second is how you can become involved in this process. So the increase and improve services is something that is called out within the LCAP. Is actually a part of the template. It's at the end of it. The essence and spirit is that services are going above and beyond what the core curriculum is, right? And this is above and beyond to support students who are not meeting the expected outcomes. And they're targeting, again, those English learners, low income, and students in foster care. Other high need students, of course, we want to be called out as well. And this should be a comprehensive document, not a document or a plan in silo of others. And of course, we want to see that there's closing outcomes and performance gaps. So in terms of increasing and improving services, we have to, per compliance measures, we have to look at and make sure that they've meet the minimum amount of a percentage of money going towards those students, right? And we want to make sure that those students are receiving specific supports to help them through the process. In addition, the funding creates targets. And again, that local context is super important based on the districts that you're working with. But funds for students can be, and for your work can be in student engagement, like we talked about, parent involvement, school climate, student outcomes, student achievement, course access, implementation of state standards, as well as basic services. So funding should be going to those areas. Most importantly is thinking in terms of how to close any outcome gaps that we may have, right? So when you look at data at an aggregate or high level for all students, is that the same for our English learners, for our low income, for foster youth, African American, Native American? So making sure that while working through the LCAP plan, that data is being collected, and we're looking for strategic goals and strategic work to support and making sure that our students are on track and they are thriving. So here's our call to action. I just wanted to, like I said, it was a boot camp, so I know it's a lot of information. I prefaced this, I warned you, right? But I want you to know that that your call to action really is, and our call to action is to become aware. So those of you who have not been a part of the LCAP process, it's never too late. It's actually a great opportunity. Number one is there is a link, and I'll make sure that that we get that into the chat box. There is a link for a website where we post all of the LCAPs. So you'll notice when you go there, all the districts within San Diego County have their LCAPs posted there. Now just note, this is the 2019-20 LCAP. In addition, the learning continuity plans are there as well. And so the learning continuity plans are posted. So if you're interested in looking at like what plan was happening during the 2021 school year, you could look through that. Also, we recommend that you review the LCAP once it's ready to go, or even once a draft is ready to go, have a look. Even if it could be a hefty document, if you wanted to target into priorities 5 and 6 and see how the district is meeting the needs of a positive school climate and student engagement, that might be a place to start. We recommend, and I always recommend this, is to monitor and attend school board meetings. A lot is talked at those meetings, and especially about priorities, about how to support students with mental health and social emotional well-being. That could be a place for you to hear information about how counselors are involved in this process. Know those priorities, as well as attend any stakeholder meeting at the sites or at the district level, even if it's like the DLAC, the District English Language Advisory Committee, or ELAC. Be a part of those meetings, because you'll get not only data about what is needed, but also you can share information about a counselor's perspective, which is so important. So I'm going to stop there, and I want to thank you. I know we have time for questions and answers, and I've heard the chat box going off, so I'm going to stop there and answer any questions you may have.
Well, as those questions are being put in the chat box, I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Hernandez, for breaking down what could be something really, really complex into something very simple. I know that when I first heard you speak about the LCAP and the priorities, it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that as a school counselor. I didn't know that my role would have an important part. And so I really appreciate you taking time to share that with school counselors, and that we do have an important place in this document, and that we need to make sure that we're in there. And so it looks like we have a comment, a lot of info, but really good. Being involved in this can help advocate for our professions. Yes, yes, yes. Even more to show how important and essential we are. Absolutely.
Yes, agreed. Absolutely.
So thank you. And then it looks like Zaret has posted a survey in the chat, and we're also adding one here on your screen as well. So if you could just please make sure to complete your survey, add a nice comment for Dr. Hernandez for presenting this information and for sharing so many great resources. I know that when I have a question about something, I may not have it right away, but I know if I had a resource where I can go tackle it and find it, that's another great tool. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here today. And Zaret, are you seeing any other questions in the chat?
No questions, but we do have amazing comments. Thank you for the deeper dive into the LCAP. We touched on it in one of my classes, but this gives me a better idea of what I'll be getting into as a school counselor.
Yay, 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 yay. And this is the time to be asking those questions, you know, especially around mental health. We saw that addition last year, and we didn't see a lot of mentioning of how the school counselor was going to be supporting that. And I read some of the LCAPs that were coming in, especially in San Diego County. So it's really important to make sure that you read that and see, are you listed? Are you mentioned? And then if not, why? And it could just be an oversight, but we don't want to be an oversight anymore. We want to make sure that we are included in there so that people know the value of our role. All right, well, thank you everyone. Again, please complete the survey. It really helps us, and it provides great feedback, especially for Dr. Hernandez for taking the time to put this all together and share with us. So now I'm going to take you out with some music. Enjoy.